She founded an architectural concrete company.
He founded a $100 million clothing company.
She took the world by storm as a social media star.
He took the world by storm as a famous serial entrepreneur.
Together we started a business.
And had babies.
Now we're figuring out the best ways to do both.
Join us as we learn from other entrepreneurs going through the same life struggles.
As they share their life hacks about success, love, kids,
and everything in between.
Welcome to the Pretty and Punk podcast. My name is Dan Caldwell.
And I'm Ildiko Ferenczi.
Ildiko.
Ferenczi.
So
jealous. Stop it.
No, I'm really happy today because we have a guest on today. He's actually somebody that was one of my competitors when I was running Tap Out for a minute. And
wow.
But became a good friend and somebody I'm really happy that just somebody that I felt was like-minded in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
And had a good point of view and had a really incredible company and a very smart individual and a father. So we are really glad to have him on. Why don't you introduce him?
I'd love to. Today's guest changed the way we shop for shoes. He was told no one would ever buy shoes online. As an innovative thinker who embraces uncertainty, he still believed in his idea and started his shoe company in the late 90s during the dot-com boom, only to be hit with the dot-com crash just 2 years later. Starting with basically no money, he took photos of shoes at retail stores, only buying them off walls after they sold on his small website. What Steve Jobs was for the personal computing space, he is to the shoe business. In 2009, the retail giant Amazon came knocking and ultimately acquired the company he had founded for $1.2 billion.
With a B.
He is a founder of one of the largest footwear retailers in the world, Zappos. I think you've heard of that. And an owner of the Golden State Warriors, the Welsh professional football club, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Swansea, City AFC, and Danish soccer club FC Helsinger. Founder, the list is so long. Founder of Basecamp Fitness in 2013, which he also sold. A co-founder of gaming company Green Park Sports, founder of Primero Tacos, founder of Dunk Contest, Sport Retail Stores, and co-founder of USR Studio, a self-proclaimed idea man and serial entrepreneur. Obviously, my goodness, a loving husband and father, and I'm sure I missed a few things. We are very excited to welcome Nick Swinmurn.
Hey, Nick, welcome to the podcast, brother. We're so glad to have you on. You're one of the guys that I really wanted to get on this podcast because I love your story. I actually repeat your story a lot to up-and-coming entrepreneurs. Whenever anybody tells me that they don't have the money to get something started, yours is like the first story that comes to mind. I know our listeners want to hear that story, but I want to go back to how you feel like you got started as an entrepreneur. What influenced you in your life that you feel like influenced you to become this incredible serial entrepreneur?
The earliest I can remember was I was sports crazy, right? So my walls were covered in sports stuff. For some reason, I had this one quote about I think it was like Lee Iacocca. I didn't even really know who he was. I just took this quote and put him in my desk. What is that on the wall for? And I had taken this quote about like, there's one and only one ambition to be the best. What else is there type thing. But I wasn't really living that. I wasn't like, which is always kind of how I am. Like, I'll say things and I'll know what I need to do, but it doesn't mean I always do it. Like I'm not always on it. Sometimes I'm too lazy or I just get distracted and I don't get stuff done. But I always kind of know what the goal is.
Yeah.
I think it first started when in junior high school, you could pick your classes, and there was one student leadership or something, right? And I remember when I look back, I thought it was awesome. You had this class, and you can basically organize shit. Or stuff. Can I swear on this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I organized like a tennis tournament, and I would go downtown and I would get all the local deli and places. Can I sell a sponsorship? All right. And they would write Italian deli and paint on a piece of paper. And hey, can you donate tennis balls? And then I'd organize a bike club. But I remember the teacher saying, guys, this is a class and there's only one person actually organizing anything and doing anything. So at that point, I guess I knew, looking back, well, I was taking the initiative, and I was always just delusional. So in high school, I would ask my parents, like, I want to open a surf shop. I don't surf. At the time, I ski, but I don't snowboard. I don't skate. And I'm like, I want to open a surf, skate, snowboard shop. And like, I think the thing was they always encouraged me. So it was like, sure, where are you going to do it? There's a place for rent down there. You have any money for it? No. Can we go look at it? And there was never, no, that's stupid. It was always kind of like, probably smiling and laughing when I turned around, but like, yeah, let's go check it out. So
your parents weren't entrepreneurs though, were they?
No. So I had to do a talk thing at UCSB, where I went to school a couple of years ago. And it was like, how did you become an entrepreneur? And it was like, well, my dad was an engineer, worked at the same company his whole career, like one company from starting until retiring. Mom was a preschool teacher. So what I realized was, I think where it came from was, I was lucky. I was born into stability, right? I was born into parents that like, we had a stable family life. We had like everything we needed. We weren't like filthy rich, but it was like, I didn't need anything, you know? And so then, and I was always encouraged to do stuff. So I think because I had this like foundation of stability, now it was okay for me to like explore uncertainty and try these things, because I knew that I had something to fall back on. If I was born into like poverty or violence or war, you know, all these things could have happened where I would be trying to get to stability. But because I had stability, now I can build on top of that. So I think that was really where I lucked out in that regard, and probably what made me not afraid is because I knew like, well, what's like the worst that can happen? And what's the worst that could happen? I mean, the worst thing that could happen did happen. I started a company in college where I always collected baseball cards. Like I was the kid in summer growing up where every day I was at the local card shop. It's called Stamps in the Attic, and I could walk there from my house. And I got into college, and I was like, I had odd jobs, and I was like, I need some money. So I went home and got my baseball cards and went to a show and sold them. And then I was like, what else could I sell? And I found this place online. I think there was a ESPN documentary, because I guess they were all fake. This place where you could just buy autographed 8x10s. And I was like, oh, I'll buy autographs and I'll sell those. So I was buying those and I was selling them. And then eventually I was like, but everyone can sell these autographs. So I had a friend that was an artist, and I was like, hey, can you paint a picture of Jason Kidd had just got drafted by the Mavericks. He was from Cal. I grew up in Northern California.
Yeah.
So I painted it, and I made the lithographs, and I sold them all. I went out to a show in Texas, and I sold them all for less than it cost me to make them, probably. So I started making more. Like the Lakers had Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones. It was right before they were good again, and I made one of them, and I made one of Jordan, which I guess was illegal. Different things, but the first Jason Kidd one, I got like 50 of them signed, right? And I paid, I don't know, maybe $750 to get 50 of them signed. And I borrowed like $1,000 from my parents to like print the 500 lithographs, whatever, or however much it was. I started to get ahead of myself. So Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones, I'd gone to these shows, and people liked the first couple of lithographs, and they're like, yeah, we'd order more. But I was afraid to tell the artist exactly what to do. So we made it more poster-like, which wasn't what the lithograph collector was looking for. And then I sent them to both players. I was like, I'm going to get all 500 signed by both players. So I got Eddie Jones to sign them. I said, hey, you got to sign them with pencil on the border. So he did. Nick Van Exel, I don't know if it was his agent or his marketing manager, I was like, get this guy to sign them. Make sure he signs them. Like, can you do it in person? He's like, no, send them to him and he'll do them. All right, make sure he signs them in pencil on the edges. But he signed them with a Sharpie right across the middle, which wasn't what they wanted, right? So I couldn't sell them.
You couldn't sell any of them?
I could sell a couple, but I couldn't sell them for like the price I wanted and to the people who had agreed to pre-order them.
Right.
Through that, because I went too fast without thinking about the business, I ended up like, I owed my parents almost $10,000. And I was so fucking stressed about that for so long. And I felt so bad.
Yeah.
That was kind of my first attempt at business. I remember I called it Swinmurn Collectibles. And my dad's like, why are you using a family name on this? Like, think of another day. Yeah, that was the start. It wasn't like I thought, oh, I'm going to be a businessman. I want to do this. In college, I was just delusional. I had an idea. I was going to open a salad bar called Shrooms in Isla Vista. But really, it was going to be a bar. So there's this place, Dollar Burrito, that we agreed to buy out. The guy barely spoke English. But again, my parents humored me. I drove back. I said, hey, I got this opportunity. I can open this restaurant. I could learn more doing this while I'm in college than anything else. So they drove down to talk to the guy. It turned out when we got a translator that really it was going to be like 2 or 3 times as expensive as what we thought. So they said no. But I always thought, I have a son now. Like if he came back and said, when he's like 19 and said, hey, I'm going to open a salad bar by day, bar by night. Like, can you come down and see if we can buy this place? I would have been like, you're not even 21. My parents drove down and they looked at it and they said, oh, maybe, you know what? It's a little too expensive. I think the deal's not what it was. Why don't you just wait? So it was always done in a way that didn't like make me think it was impossible.
That's really cool of your parents to do that. Yeah, I mean, not everybody has supportive parents like that. I'm sure there's a lot of people whose parents tell them not to do that.
Yeah.
But did you learn any lessons from losing your parents' money? I mean, moving forward to your next business?
Because that must have been hard.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt really guilty, right? And I didn't really have the concept of how that affected them. So I wasn't sure like what was a ton of money, what wasn't a little bit of money. I know we weren't just throwing money around, but I wasn't sure like how bad did I fuck up? Like how much does this matter? Does it not matter? I think where it affected me later was, first when I started Zappos, I put a big stake. I started the company and I just put a bunch of my parents' name and some of my brother's name. And I was like, all right, if I can get this to work, this will pay them back. Zappos, we raised money and it worked out well. At that point, I'm thinking, oh, raising money is not, I had kind of forgotten. I'm like, I'm good. I've settled my debts and I don't have to worry about that. But after Zappos, not to jump around, I left Zappos and started another company the next day. And that one, I was going to use my own money. And a few people asked, like Tony, who was the CEO of Zappos at the time, he said, you know, whatever you're doing here, I'll invest. And he said, are you looking for investors? I said, no, but yeah, fuck it. If you want in, you can do it. And my chiropractor, who had invested in Zappos in the very beginning, he said, hey, I want to invest too. So I was like, all right. So I had the two of them. I don't know if there was anyone else. And I remember that this company didn't work out. And this company didn't work out. Actually, that's how I met you, was a stagger. Eventually, it turned into this MMA thing, which was a precursor to Throne. But like, I kept it going partially out of like pride and ego.
Nobody wants to fail,
No.
Yeah, but also because I was letting someone else down because I was going to lose their money. So after that, I was like, fuck that. I'm not taking anyone else's money. So since then, I hadn't taken anyone else's money for any projects. Until recently, we have a project, Green Park, which started with a couple of guys, and that we raised quite a bit of money. But as a rule of thumb, I think that losing my parents' money in the beginning made me realize like it's just an extra layer of something that sucks if it doesn't work out. Like, it's okay. I can deal with it. I can handle like, all right, I fucked up, whatever. Didn't work out. I have a short memory. So what does that have to do with anything? You know, like I failed yesterday. I'll try today. But it just feels different when it's like when you've lost someone else's money.
Right.
Well, as long as your wins are bigger than your failures, right?
Stagger also hired a couple of my really good friends. And they thought hey, this guy, look what happened with Zappos. This guy's probably got the magic touch. He probably knows what he's doing. And the reality was, what does that have to do with this? This is a new company. This is a new thing. It doesn't mean I can have the same success. And so I remember that was so stressful because I'm like, dude, these guys moved out to Vegas to work on this thing with me and it didn't work. And so now I felt like, what else could they have done in the last couple of years? And what would have happened if they hadn't sold their house in the Bay Area? And how much would that have appreciated? Instead, they bought a place in Vegas and now Vegas crashed. And
That's tough.
Yeah. Someone's time, someone's money. You feel like you're responsible for it.
Yeah, I get that. When we sold the company and we had to lay a bunch of people off, I totally understand what you're going through. Okay, so we got to go back because this is my favorite story as an entrepreneur. Every time somebody tells me that they can't start their company because they don't have the money to do it, I just love throwing your story in their face because it goes to show you that you honestly don't always need money to start a business. I mean, obviously there's certain businesses that it takes money to do that, but there's always, if you're creative and you have you figure out some way to, how can I start this company right now? If you had to do it, how could I start this company without any money? What would I have to do? And your story is just totally explains that. So you got to tell our audience how you first started Zappos, how that came to be.
After college, I got a job in sports. I worked for the minor league team, then I worked for the Padres, and I realized it just wasn't for me. So I moved home. I didn't really know anything about the internet. Answered an ad in the paper for a company, AutoWeb. So I joined AutoWeb, and it was like totally different. It was, the founder was my age, maybe younger, a little bit older, younger. I don't even remember. Small company. Everyone was so excited. And Amazon had just gone public. I didn't even know what Amazon was.
And what year is this right now about?
90, wait, where are we? 97 probably.
Oh, so it's the dot-com era.
And I'm like, wow, this just seems so exciting. Anything seems possible, And and I don't see any reason from being in this company. I was like the 12th or 13th person why I couldn't do this on my own. So I was looking for ideas. I went to the shoe store one day. So AutoWeb you say, I want to buy a Jeep, and they'll say, okay, fill out this form and we'll send it to 10 Jeep dealers and they'll all hit you up. So I was at the shoe store looking for shoes in the mall one day, and I couldn't find the shoes. And I thought, I wonder if I could just do the AutoWeb model for shoes. What are you looking for? And I'll just send you, one of your local shoe stores will hit you up. I thought, okay, maybe it's a good idea, but whatever. I had a bunch of ideas, so I didn't pursue it. So I ended up leaving AutoWeb to pursue a different idea, which was called For Students. It was going to be this student portal. I basically created this one-page website. It was just an image. And I don't remember how, but Student Advantage was a company in Boston. They, I don't know how we got connected. They saw it or something. And someone there ended up being a couple of years older than me from the same high school.
Mm-hmm.
So they flew me out there and they said, hey, we're going to build a student portal. They were doing a student discount card. Flew me out there and they're like, hey, we've got the same idea as you. Which also showed me that just throwing something out there is a good idea because no one knows where you are with it.
Right.
Anyway, they offered me a job, but basically there's probably less money than I was making at AutoWeb, the job I had just quit. And
so essentially to not be an entrepreneur, to actually come work for them.
So sky's this, you can run this for us and you'll have a little bit of equity type of thing. And so I said yes, mostly because I didn't really have a plan for the students thing. I just had these ideas, but I didn't have a plan. So I thought, well, These guys allow a plan. They have money. Well, that's how I reached out to them because they were a student discount card. So I figured, let me see if I can get them to advertise. And anyway, it turned into this thing. And then I flew home and I told my parents, I go, hey, I'm moving to Boston. I'm like, what? And I'm like, I'm moving to Boston. I got this job. And they're like, dude, you just quit your job. 2 weeks ago? You said you're going to start this company because you didn't want to work for someone else. You want to work for yourself. Right away, someone offers you a salary, the same salary you were just making to go work for them and do this thing. How are you going to be happy doing that? I was like, fuck. Well, good point. But I said, hey, but after being out there, I don't feel as passionate about that idea anymore because I don't think I can compete with the resources they have and the head start they have. Forget about the whole fact that I don't even want technical. I'm not, it's like, so they, my dad was like, hey, the shoe idea was a good idea. Why don't you give that one a shot? I was like, all right. So the next day I was like,
and your parents told you that?
It wasn't like it was I had a plan. I just what was the alternative, right? So I have no money and I have no real skill set. So I'm like, let me go, I go down to the shoe store and I'm like, let me take a picture of your shoes. Can I take a picture of your shoes? I'm going to sell them online. And the guy's like, we don't resell our shoes. I know I'll pay full price. I just want to take a picture of all your shoes. And if someone buys it, I'll come in here, I'll pay you full price and I'll ship it to them. The guy's like, all right, knock yourself out. Again, lucky, right? It was another guy. He could have said, if I had a store right now and someone walked in and said that, I would probably say, no, come on, get out of here. Cause why,
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Why I say that, right? So this guy, his name was Ellie Monarch from Footwear, et cetera. He was like, yeah, go ahead. So I did, and I put a quick site up, and I sold a couple of shoes. And I was like, oh, shit, okay. So then now I knew I could sell shoes. I started doing more research. I found a report online, a Footwear Market Insights report that said that the year before, so that would have been 98, $40 billion worth of shoes were sold, and $2 billion of those were sold through mail order catalogs. I wasn't aware that was, I was totally, I had no idea. I literally thought, I went to the shoe store and they only had red and blue Vans, that was all Vans was making right now.
Right.
And if I went back 3 months later and I wanted blue ones again and they didn't have them, I thought, well, I guess Vans isn't making them this season.
Right.
I didn't know that. I never really thought about how it all worked.
Right.
I saw that report and I thought, okay, so there's people will buy these online. Because even, anyone you talk to, you got to try them on. And then I found the shoe show. So I flew out to the shoe show with a piece of paper that said shoesite.com. Called it Shoe Site because there was a site called Sports Site.
Shoe show, is that a convention?
Yes, the WSA show. So it's every February and August in Vegas. And I went in and it was huge. And I went in and I was like, how do I just walked up to booths. And you've been at trade shows, imagine you can't just, I just thought I'd walk up to the booths, walk in and be like, yeah. And my ask was, can I take all your shoes, put them online? And if someone buys it, can I buy one from you? But basically, I guess drop shipping.
A drop ship, model.
So they were like, well, most of the cool brands or the big brands were like, do you have an appointment? No. I couldn't even get past the little stand in the front of the booth. But I could walk the aisles where there are smaller open booths, and I talked to people, and I got enough encouragement of people being like, maybe one day. I don't see why it wouldn't work, or keep trying. So I took that as like confirmation that there was something here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back, and then I got a temp job at Silicon Graphics doing like some light HTML design stuff for their intranet. And across the hallway was a guy, and it was a really weird company. Like everyone was working on a side project, and it actually I think it's the Google offices, one of the Google's offices now, but it was a company that was just so bloated.
Well, back then everybody had money, right? So all the .coms were being thrown money, and so they were all building these extravagant offices. So they were probably everywhere up there in San Francisco.
I told the story before, but I get my first time job. So basically, I had a friend around the same time that I was just brainstorming ideas. A friend came over, Billy, and he told me and my friend Kevin, he's like, "You guys know what HTML is?" And we're like, "No." He's like, "Dude, you got to learn it. It takes like fucking couple days to learn it, and I'm getting paid. I can't remember what it was, like $25 an hour to just do HTML. It's so easy."
Yeah.
So we both went to learn it. It was funny. Kevin, from that day forward, just that's what he's done is web and app design stuff the whole time for the last 25 years. And I learned a little bit, and I was like, oh, you know what? I should make a website. Stanford was just down the street, and I went to the basketball games. So I see them play Arizona. The year Arizona won the national championship with like Mike Bibby. And for some reason, I got Mike, HTML introduced me to domain name. I got MikeBibby.com. So I just made a website of Mike Bibby when he got drafted by the Grizzlies, the Vancouver Grizzlies at the time. And so I put the site up, and it's just a basic site, like a couple of pictures. It says official Mike Bibby site. And I get a call from someone saying they're his uncle, saying, "Hey, come on, like I'm Mike Bibby's uncle. Like we want our domain name." And I'm like, "Well, hey, I'm not doing this as a business. Like, why don't I just make the site for you?" So like, all right, go ahead. So I was like, what am I going to call it? So I put a little thing at the bottom that said Web Athletes was my company. And so Sports Illustrated, when I was growing up, like that was I had signed the Sports Illustrated. I just did cover to cover. And one day I'm looking through Sports Illustrated, and they have these little, box things, and it's like several athletes are now starting their own websites on the World Wide Web. And one of them says, Mike Bibby, his website was done by Web Athletes. And I'm like, oh shit, I just made it. Like, that's huge. This is the pinnacle. It's all fucking downhill from here. So from there, I don't even know how to sidetrack.
And that's still prior to Zappos, right?
Yeah. So that's where I learned HTML. So I got a job at Silicon Graphics. And it was pretty funny. Like the most I'd made at a job before that, I think was probably like $15 an hour or something. And I went to the interview, and she said, yeah, I can't remember what it was, like $30 an hour or something. And I was just kind of sitting there like, usually I just blab and I'm quick to answer, and if I don't know something. And so, but this time for some reason I was in my head, I'm like, can I even do this job? Like, what should I say? Yes. Like, and then she said, all right, fine. $45 an hour.
Oh, geez.
You can start today. Here's your office over there. So I'm like, okay. So I had told her, I said, hey, I don't even, I'm a little rusty with, there was a Unix machines. It wasn't just like a Mac you log in. You had to type stuff to log in and stuff. So she's like, I'm going to go get a bunch of paperwork. Here's your office. Familiarize yourself with the machine. Fuck. So she comes back, and I've done nothing because I don't even know how to log into the machine. I said, hey, I'm a little rusty. I don't know how to. She's like, oh, don't worry. Whenever you get stuck, pick up the phone, call 3HELP. So I worked there for I don't know how many months. And every day I get my assignment, I call 3HELP. Someone somewhere else in the building would walk me through how to do what I was getting paid $45 an hour to do.
Wow.
Which is crazy. But I met across the hallway a guy. He's like, you got anything else you're working on? I'm like, yeah, I got this thing, shoe site. And he's like, oh, tell me about it. And then he introduced me to someone else. Then he helped me. He's like, do you have a business plan? I'm like, no. So he helped me kind of put together a business plan.
Wow.
His name was Jared. And then my chiropractor, I went to the chiropractor, and he's like, he's just going from booth to booth talking to people about stuff. And he's like, what are you working on? I go, or who, what are you doing? I was like, I work at Silicon Graphics, but I'm working on the shoe site thing. And he's like, oh, tell me more. So the guy across the hall is like, I'll invest 10 grand. And then my chiropractor's like, I'll invest 10 grand.
Oh, wow.
You knew he had the idea. That's great.
I'm like, let me raise 150,000. So I raised 150,000. And that was how it all got started. So it was all just, there's something here. Someone's going to do it. And then when we started getting introduced to venture capitalists, it was like, I don't know if you're the guy. I don't know if this is the right time, but someone's going to do this eventually.
Yeah. I mean, it's just an incredible story because, to be able to go, and what I love about that is just that you did not own the product. And nowadays, we see that a lot through affiliate. You can do the same thing as an affiliate salesperson or create an affiliate site. But back then, I'm sure people believed that they needed to own inventory, and there's a lot of cost to that. Was there anything that sparked that idea when you were coming up with it? Like, I'm just going to walk into, I mean, walk me through that for a second. Just like, what were you thinking when you said, I'm going to walk in here and see if I can take pictures? Like, no one's, I mean, who did you get that idea from somebody? Because at that time, I'm sure nobody was thinking about that.
Part of the thing that's helped me and hurt me in different companies is I don't have a plan that I'm executing again. It's more just like, all right, well, what if we try that? All right, well, you know what? Hey, what about, I just get excited about some big idea. And then it's like, well, why wouldn't this work? Or why would that work? And
you figure it out as you go, right?
You try it.
My downside is I'm not super thorough. I'm not always doing like A/B testing. I'm not researching everything. I'm just like, because to me, it's like trying it is faster than trying to figure out how to try it. Just fucking try it. It'll take less time than figuring out how to try. When I start trying to figure out what the plan is when I get stuck and stop moving.
Yeah.
If I'm just like, why don't we just do this, do that, then, which has its downsides, but.
Yeah, you and me both too. I mean, I feel like you're a gut guy. You probably just go with your gut and like, hey, this feels right. This feels like what I should be doing right now. And that's what you do. And if it works out, it works out. If not, then you move on to the next thing.
And you got to go through that first failure so that like you get all that like feeling shit, guilt and self-pity and all that stuff out of the way and realize no one cares. No one really cares. I'm still here. What is it? What really does it matter? Like, just try again.
Yeah. They're doing their thing. You're doing your thing. Nobody cares what you're doing. You just got to do one thing or the other. You started this Zappos model. You get about 150 in initial investment, your seed investment. Now, where did you go from there? And at some point, I know you're introduced to Tony Hsieh.
So I had 150,000. So I hire a couple friends, get a little office, and I start getting introduced through Jared at Silicon Graphics. He starts introducing me to VCs. So I'm making the rounds. I'm going to like, Sequoia and all these big companies, not really understanding how big they are, what they're doing, but I'm going in and I'm pitching them on this concept. I've got my info on the market size and, the mailer catalog precedent and all that stuff.
Right.
And I'm generally getting stuck on two things. Do you have any business experience? No. Do you have any shoe experience? No. So they're wondering, are you the guy? Like, are you going to be able to figure this out? And then two, they're trying to figure out, they're just hung up on, will people buy shoes without trying them on? Those are the two things. And then the third thing, some of them are just hung up on like, I wear this fancy shoe. Are you going to carry that? It's like, whatever. So I'm doing those things. And the other thing I'm running into is you need to find someone from the shoe industry. So at the same time, I'm pretending to be a recruiter and reaching out to people at Nordstrom, because Nordstrom's the shoe store I'm more of, the biggest one. Mm-hmm. And so I'm starting to juggle, like I meet a guy, Fred. I pose as a recruiter. I call Nordstrom and I'm like, hey, can I talk to the shoe buyer? I don't know how many there are. Or what. Fortunately, right? They could have put me through a bunch of people who could have said, not called me back or said no. They put me through to this guy, Fred. Well, they said, what are you? And I said, I'm a small shoe brand and I want to see about selling my shoes at Nordstrom. And so put me through to him. I leave him a message saying, hey, I'm an e-commerce recruiter. There's a new shoe startup. I want to see if you're interested. So I meet him for a beer and we like talk about it. And he thinks, he sees the vision too, but he won't leave his job because we don't have enough money to be sustainable. He's just had a kid, and then he also says he's not the one with the contacts. So he wants me to hire his boss also.
Oh, no.
So I meet with his boss. So now I got to hire both of them. I mean, in theory, I could have just hired his boss, but that doesn't feel right because Fred was self-aware enough to say, hey, I'm not your guy. So you need to hire my boss as well. So now I can't be like, well, fuck you. I'm just going to hire your boss.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, now I got to hire these two guys. And I'm still getting no's everywhere. My brother's wife's dad is a lawyer at Wilson Sonsini. So it's a good tech law firm in Silicon Valley. So he's making some introductions too. And we get to the end of them all and I haven't gotten anywhere. And he's like, you know what? I don't really have anyone else to introduce you to. I got the last resort. There's these guys, Venture Frogs. They're kind of like you, right? You're trying to get a deal. These guys just sold their company. They got a bunch of money, but they have no background in investing. So not getting the best deals. From what I've seen through my partners and things that have come across the desk, they'll invest in anything. So if they don't invest in you, I think, it's time to move on.
Right.
And he'd always been telling me the whole time. He'd been really helpful. Like he'd help me, incorporating all this stuff. And he was always telling me, hey, I don't know this is the idea, but you're going to learn from it. So just keep moving forward. Like, okay. So he introduces me to, I go to their website and it's just a website with a phone number. So I call the number, I leave a message. Hey, it's Nick, this, shoe startup. Here's the size of the market. Here's 5% of shoes are sold online. So Tony calls me back or I don't know if it's Tony or Millie. There's three of them, Tony, Millie, and Alfred. Call me back, and I go meet Tony. And at this point, I've gone to all these meetings in like a suit and tie with a presentation. I don't feel like myself. So I feel like, well, they're probably aware of the fact that I'm trying to present myself as something that I'm not, in a way that I wouldn't normally present myself. So I feel like that, people can read that stuff. This time I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to go in shorts and a t-shirt. And so I go and I don't know if it might not have been shorts and a t-shirt. I might have worn a polo shirt and short. I have no idea. I might have gotten just a little bit dressed up.
Right.
But he was just a guy like me. And we just sat there talking in this empty apartment on two chairs. And he was like, all right, I like it. Seems like a good idea. I was like, okay, cool. So I left thinking, all right, well, he was cool. And I felt more comfortable. And I know I can go through this pitch forwards and backwards now because I didn't bring anything with me. But who knows? So then Alfred calls me a couple of days later. And so I got this little office still. It's an old converted apartment, which is actually pretty funny. When we moved out, we ended up moving out a little bit later because we ended up hiring Fred and his boss, John. And they were driving from up near Fairfield. They were driving down to the city and they didn't want to cross the Bay Bridge.
And you're still selling shoes that you're just, it's basically, it's a loss at that point, right? You're just buying the shoes that are off the shelf and sending them to people, proving the concept.
We got some sales. We're proving that people will buy shoes, but we're not wowing anyone with volume. And so,
right.
But anyways, when we moved out of that office, guy took it over named Craig. And it was he had a company. He's like, I got a company called Craigslist. And so he moved in and took it over.
Oh,
so
boy.
sometimes we'd have to go pick up our mail and he'd be like, hey, Nick, it's Craig. And then he's still there. He totally renovated that apartment. Eventually, Alfred called and said, hey, we're gonna invest $500,000. And but it's contingent on you getting the shoe guys to join on. And the shoe guys said, if you can raise money, we'll bring you on. So they came on board. Tony, Alfred, and Millie had a company called Venture Frogs, and they had a fund, and they also had an incubator. So they rented like 2 floors, San Francisco. They were in the process of remodeling it. They built this core team, and they were gonna have this core team that was going to service all the companies, and they were also going to create their own companies that would service the companies. So they had like a web design company called WebJuice that was going to build the websites for all the companies. And so what ended up happening in the long run, the way Tony became more involved was, so for the first say 4 months, it was like any investor. They were in San Francisco. We were out in Emeryville. Now we'd moved across the bay so these guys don't have to commute. And we would catch up with them every couple of weeks. And if we wanted to do something that cost more than $50,000, I think we had to call them and just run it by them.
Right.
But not part of the company. And so we kept meeting with more companies. They introduced us to companies because they had the company they had sold was called Link Exchange. Sequoia was the only investor there. We had already gotten to
Sequoia
a partner meeting. Capital, yeah. So we'd already gotten to a partner meeting at Sequoia without them.
Right.
So we figured with them now, this should put us over the edge, but it didn't. So we were going to run out of money again early the next year. And they said, no, they wouldn't put any more money in. And we're like, I think we're going to have to shut down. And then they called back eventually and said, all right, we'll put more money in, but you guys need to move over here into the incubator. And it turned out we were the only company that moved into the incubator. Eventually there was the crash. So no companies moved into the incubator. The companies they'd started even themselves, those guys, even the WebJuice guys, took the money they were getting paid by Venture Frogs, started another company and just left and started that. So it was this whole mess, but super fortunate for us. They had built this infrastructure of accounting and human resources and tech support and IT guys that we didn't have any of that. And so we were there. So those guys were like, well, we spent our money and we're not going to do this incubator. So Alfred went and got a job at a company, Tell Me Networks, as like the VP of finance. Millie went back to being a lawyer. And Tony was like, well, I guess I'll work on Zappos because like you guys seem cool and there's no other company here.
That's how Tony came on. Part of the show is we like to talk about, we're talking about families and how, we're able to be entrepreneurs while still running families. You can see that I got our son running around here, especially during the quarantine because we don't have any place for him to go at this point. Were you married at this time?
I met my wife at Gabby at Zappos. And so she was a couple years in. We had just moved into the newer offices in the Venture Frogs have been working on. And she got hired. She was a customer service rep. And we kind of spread out now. We're on 2 floors. So I had my desk, and it wasn't so small now. You weren't in the same room as everyone, and people were walking by. So I'd put a candy jar on my desk so people would have a reason to stop by and say hi.
Yeah.
So whenever she would walk by, I'd encourage her to come get some candy. Eventually she did. And then the people at the neighboring desks would be like, hey, when that girl walks by, you always ask her to get some candy. You don't seem to ask anyone else. So we started dating, and then HR called me in, was like, hey, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know, it seems cool. And then they were like, well, this is only going to end two ways. You're either going to get married, or you're going to be, you're going to have some issues. And so I was like, no, I think it'll be good. And so once it became that we were actually dating, then it was like, all right, look, which I resented later because not everyone followed this, but we followed it, which was, all right, well, technically the head of customer service is under me. She's under them. So that person can't manage her because he would be worried about what I'm thinking. So we got to move her out of there, which actually sucked for her because she really liked customer service and she would have become the customer service manager when they had that posting. And that's kind of when it all came to a head, is she can't be. So they moved her into merchandising because merchandising wasn't under me. And actually, in a way, it worked out well because she became a handbag buyer, which she was more passionate about. But it kind of messed with her career in a way, right? Which is one of the things. Let's skip ahead. The weirdest thing is like getting out of not understanding you're not the only person. You're always like, that's cool. Let's move from customer service to handbag. Like, what? It's like, but I like my job and I want to advance in my job and I'm about to get it promoted. Well, you have to go over there, but you're just looking at it from your perspective. Right. But anyways, we dated for about a year and then we got engaged and we knew right. I mean, our first date we were kind of wasted, but I called I was supposed to go to Hawaii. My parents, my brother, and all that, his family, and all that. And then I remember I was hammered on my first date. I'm like, "Hey, can this girl come along with us?" My dad's let's get a refundable ticket. And I was like, refundable ticket. So it's cool. I mean, really, literally from the first day we went out, we also worked together. I don't think we've been apart for more than a couple of days if one of us went on a business trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at this point, the company's growing, Zappos is growing, and we know, that where the story ends up.
The priorities are changing.
But your priorities are changing a little bit. At some point, you decide you're going to leave the company around 2006 or so. Did she stay on with the company?
So we moved to Vegas. So we moved the company to Vegas 2004, and then I think I left first. I don't really remember. Within there, it was separate issues. So within their department, a couple of the handbag buyers, they all just kind of became disenchanted with their boss, and her and her friends left. And I don't remember exactly the timing of before or after me. For me, it was just in the beginning, I was doing everything right. I would make the site. Even for the first couple of years, I could just force myself into like, hey, can I put up a site? I remember one time I put up like a site that was all like hot pink and bright blue, just because I wanted to see if it would work, and they would they would let me, right? And I'm in all the meetings with all the brands, and I'm in the marketing meetings, and I know everyone's name. And after a while, it's like we hire people smarter, better at these things. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of pushes you towards like the more mundane tasks, which is, they're part of having a business. But it was just like, you're in meetings and you're in a meeting to be in a meeting and you're in a meeting because it is you in a meeting. It's like, fuck, I don't want to do this anymore. When we were in San Francisco, I was starting to get that feeling of like, wow, this isn't quite the same. When we decided to move to Vegas, I was like, we'll go right away. And so took the first group of 10 people out there, and it was like being in a startup again. We all lived in a Holiday Inn Express next to Sunset Station. And it's kind of like being in college and a startup at the same time, right? We're going out every night. We're working on this thing. Well, eventually later, the rest of the company all moves out, and it's not as fun anymore.
Big business again. Yeah.
But as a founder, how can you, I've always felt like, we haven't made it, right? We're not like, we have this huge success story. We've got a little bit of liquidity because Sequoia eventually ends up investing, and we just use it as like a employee liquidity. You could sell X amount of your shares or none.
And you're taking money off the table. You're selling your personal shares.
I've got some money there. Every once in a while on the secondary market, people would offer and you could opt into that. And so I've got some money, but I'm like, but we're not, there's no guarantee we're going to make it. In fact, most of us think we're probably going to burst at the seams or go bankrupt at some point. And so it feels like, well, the founder can't leave in that scenario because that's not a good signal. And it's like, but eventually I'm just like, type up this email so many times. And eventually one time I was like, you know what, fuck it. It's just like, what do we, like, I would hear them say, like Fred and Tony and different people, like, this is awesome. We should like keep this private forever. Oh, dude, I want us to like go public or get acquired.
Have an exit here at some point.
2005, we met with Jeff Bezos, came out with some other people, and they wanted to buy the company. We said no. We wouldn't even hear like what he wanted to offer, really, because our board member from Sequoia, Mike Moritz, was there. Yeah, I was just like, "What do you mean?" And I knew I'm conflicted. Selfishly, I want us to sell the company. I want some money. I want to go on and do something else.
Right.
But I knew that wasn't necessarily the best thing for all the employees and for everyone else.
And ultimately, that became a good decision.
Yeah, it was a good decision in the end. I mean, we never actually know what he would have paid us, so who knows? But I'm guessing we made more later. Yeah, you just get conflicted on like, And then the same thing, right? Same thing, recurring thing is like, you're not as important as you think you are. You know what? You leave, it is what it is. Like now, for a while, everyone thought there was a drama and all this stuff in it, and there was no drama. It wasn't like there was no drama. It's not like I'm not annoyed at times by things and people aren't annoyed by me, but it's nothing like contentious or like, get out of here, or I'm out of here, trying to storm it out. It's just like, you just get to a point where you're like, this is not my forever thing. I don't want to do this forever.
Yeah.
I find myself going to the office and like, it's harder to get up to go to the office. I go to the office and I start walking around. I'm like, what am I doing? There's nothing I really want to do. I'm in a meeting. I'm not paying attention. It's just like,
well, you're the consummate. When I think of you, Nick, honestly, I think of you like this consummate serial entrepreneur, the idea guy, right? The guy that comes up with these ideas. Every time I've ever talked to you, you always have about 3 ideas on the table that are floating around. Oh yeah, I'm doing this, and yeah, I have this idea, and I have this this basketball thing that I'm doing. It's like you got all these ideas brewing inside your head. And I think, and I get to be that way sometimes a little bit. We're both that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I'm sure I could imagine that when that company starts to grow big, I've been in a bigger company and it doesn't become as fun anymore. You're not as nimble. You can't implement ideas as fast. You don't have you start to not understand where everything's going. So after you left in around 2006. You started that one company that you said you ended up closing down. At what point was your son born in there?
So he was born in 2008. He kind of came along right when I was so basically what happened, the company was called Stagger, which stood for Styling Graphics. Started out, it was going to be this we built this really cool front end. You could mix and match graphics. We did licensing deals with like Madonna and different bands and you were going to take all their album art and everything they ever had, and you could take elements out of it and make all this stuff. We got off to a great start with Madonna, not so great with the people right after that. Eventually, we met a guy, Robert Rivetta, him, who had Chris Lieben. I had just watched whatever it was, Manager. Tough One. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we made this little green guy for Chris Lieben. He wore it on his shirt. It said Stagger. It was driving people back to be able to customize a shirt using different Chris Lieben elements. But eventually, the machines were so temperamental. It was so hard to get good quality with them that we just shifted to pre-printed stuff. We found ourselves getting more and more MMA stuff. And then it was weird because now here we are. We're excited. I never heard of MMA. All of a sudden liked it. We're doing all this stuff, gotten fighters wearing it, getting some traction. But like, if you did a Google search for a Stagger, the first thing that comes up is make a custom Madonna shirt. So we got Nate Diaz wearing a Stagger shirt.
And then Madonna.
People like, where can I get that shirt? And they search it. So I'll make a custom Madonna shirt. It's just a disconnect.
Right. The demo don't match.
Yeah, but because I had those other people's money, I kept shifting it. Yeah, luckily he was young because like that was the hardest period for me because I felt like I had this failing company. It was right after Zappos, so I started questioning like, did I have anything to do with fucking Zappos being successful? I'm trying to do this thing. I got 2 of my best friends moved out. They're looking at me like, what the fuck? You don't have the answers. My wife's like, what are you doing? And like, you don't seem happy. You left to start this thing. You don't seem happy. And then what I realized one day was, I'm wearing the shirt every day, right? I'm wearing a Stagger shirt every day. So every day I look in there. First, I'm not seeing me. I'm seeing this logo, which I'm not and I'm not happy with that company. So it just starts becoming me. And I remember there was one day, it sounds stupid. I was just like, I'm not wearing those shirts anymore. I just felt better. But I had to get to that point eventually of like, and I had those, I had Dr. Vic, I had Tony's money. I was just like, I don't want to lose their money. So I ended up losing way more of my own money just to not have to admit that I was going to lose their money and that I was going to.
Because you kept the company going.
Yeah, I kept it going. And I was like, and I see a lot of people do this, is like, you believe that you get all mixed up on what your mission is. You feel like your mission is that company at all costs. It's like, no.
Right.
Yeah. You have an idea for a company. If the company doesn't work out, it's okay to stop it.
That's
and
right.
And start fresh and go on to something else. You don't have to you're not tied to that company and you have to zigzag your whole life on this one company. Because all of a sudden at some point, you're so far in the hole and you're so far off your original vision that like, you're not, you'd be better off if you did the same exact thing from scratch, or you kept the company from the day before and now you've got debt attached and all these other weird things. You're going to have so much more success with the thing that just clean start. And it doesn't really change the financials, right?
Right.
Like if you've lost X amount of dollars on this and you just start today with new money, it's the same expense. It's just psychologically though, I realized, okay, I just got to get rid of it, move on.
I think people confuse quitting. They think that that's quitting. If you quit, if you close down a company, you're quitting, when truly you're not a quitter because you're moving on to the next thing. And you're just quitting would be if you just stopped it all together and you said, I'm never going to start another business to get again and just get out of this entrepreneurial thing altogether. That would be quitting, but you're not a quitter.
Yeah. And you always read about like people were about to give up, but they didn't, and it turned into a huge success. So everyone thinks that's right around the corner.
Right.
But family at the time is like, so it took a toll, right? It was like, no wife wants a, complaining husband who's like doing something completely by his own choice, So that took me a while to realize. It's like, she'd be like, dude, you're doing this because you want to do this. You're not even like, you don't even have to have a job. You have a shitty boss who you have to go. You're like, this is all of your own choosing, there's no, so, and I would sit there and I would get all like, like, oh, I suck. Like, I can't fucking do anything like this. And she'd be like, and then, it's like, she'd be like, okay, if you say you suck, what are you saying about, like this doesn't make any sense. Like you're saying a whole bunch of other people suck. So I was in that for a while, and then I, snapped out of it. And that was when, started Dethrone. And then I look back now, I didn't understand, like, to me, it made perfect sense. Well, hey, I got to go to these fights. We're a fight brand. Hey, I got to go here. Sorry, I got to go to this thing. Got to go to that thing. And you look back and like, so that was my learning experience on a family side of like, you just wake up one day and you're like, have I been? Because at first it's like, hey, you look at it as kind of like, what are you talking about? Like, I have to do this. But then you start to realize from someone else's perspective, no, you don't have to do this. You're choosing to do this.
Right.
So it's okay. It will support you. But if you're going to be gone at this time, or you're going to leave me alone with this time, then you're doing it because you're choosing to do it. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but stop acting like you have to do it. So eventually through there, I kind of looked back and we had a totally different opinion of like the first couple of years of his life. And I was like, what do you mean I was gone all the time? And I was here and there. And like, you're still like, and then you go on these trips and you realize like, what am I doing? I'm just getting wasted after fights and just like doing all this stupid shit. And like, what did that have to do with business? Like, it was different for you guys. You guys were the brand. I'm not the brand. No one knows the fuck I am. I'm just a guy wearing a t-shirt. Like, I'm just like, I don't have to go out and do these things. So
but you're probably the second biggest brand in the space at the time. Yeah. You were on a lot of good guys and you were getting a lot of recognition at the time. But so did you ever bring your family out to the fights?
More so before Luke was born. But yeah, no, a little, she wasn't really that into it. And it was kind of I remember it's like, we go to Kane's fight where he beats Lesnar, and it's just like, I'm just tired. And like, I don't remember what year that was, but that must've been after, Luke was born. And she's like, we just go back to the hotel. And I'm like, I gotta go to this, I gotta go to this after. So it's just like, it just creates this weird, I don't know.
We went
that was a long time ago. And that was a stage. It wasn't even the work stuff. It was just like the being part of an industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That whole industry.
I was just out goofing. I wasn't like,
doing real business.
We weren't the brand that had like all these girls around and all this stuff. We were just a kind of a handful of just goofy guys that just drank and made fun of each other, But like, still, it was like it gets a hard transition. Like,
now you start to feel like you have to have that table. We'd have this after party, and you feel like you had to have an after party, and we feel like we have to have an after party. And it really doesn't move the needle at all for the brand, really. So it's just you're going through the motions and probably a lot of time and money.
You just have to learn that, like, I don't remember describing it. I remember having a moment of clarity where it was like, what sucks? I can't just think of myself. I'm seeing things through my eyes. And then I would like, okay, I could get the concept that like I should see something through someone else's eyes. Mm-hmm. But then there's just this moment, at least for me, where it's like, this isn't just someone, right? This is like my wife. Like, this is like, these views have to be equal. In a way, it feels like it's not balanced, like, like, I didn't just sign up to be your wife. Like, I'm a person, and like, you're my husband just as much as I'm your wife. And like, it was, it wasn't like, luckily we talked about these things and we were kind of went through it all. So we didn't have like, but I remember it was like it wasn't like this crazy relationship. It was more just like, I would just trip out and like, am I fucking selfish? Like, what is going on here? Why, what is she talking about? And then one day you just kind of realize like, I get it. And then, and there's also that part, that's the whole struggle from going from young to not so young, where you're like, your friends are who influence you more than anyone. And then it's like, everyone gets the thing of, oh, you're whipped and all this stuff. And you get to the point where you're like, what your family wants to do and what your friends want to do are two different things. Your whole life, you've been conditioned to, you do what your friends want to do. And so there's just this weird point where you're like, wait, what are we doing? And then I remember just being so happy, they make this transition, or at least we did, where it was like, we haven't gone out in a while. And it's like, and then you start looking forward to just like, and then you have a kid. It's like, the first step to that is, right, you go out, well, he's still getting up at 6:00. He doesn't give a shit how late you got home or how you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it turns into like slowly that turns into like another, and you just this like you're going away from your old way of doing things. And then there was a shift where you're like, I can't wait for the weekend so we can just do nothing and hang out. And then it's like, wait, are we getting old? What does that mean?
So let's fast forward a little bit. Your new company is kind of like is it an incubator or what is it exactly? Can you explain how it works? Is Luke aware that you're what you are now? I mean, I'm assuming that he understands you're an entrepreneur and you're starting new businesses. What does he think about all that stuff?
Yeah.
I think he thinks it's cool. Like he doesn't understand like the difference between the ones. So he thinks Zappos is cool. He did when he first heard of Zappos and made the connection, he was like, he thought it was cool, you know? And every once in a while he'll be like, it's kind of weird you started Zappos. I'm like, yeah. On the other stuff, like I always had a bunch of different companies. They didn't quite make sense. So I'd have Base Camp was fitness, and then I'd have like Natcheria was a restaurant, and then I'd have like clothes, Dunk Contest was a store with the Warriors, and just different things. So I was like, someone says, what do you do? I'm like, I want to solve that. So I was like, I want to start a company. It's called User Studio. So it's unique, simple, repeatable thing. So at least I can just point everyone to one place. What he had the hardest time with, so when we had Natcheria, we opened a place called XXX Chicken. It was just a chicken place in this little to-go window, which now is Primero's Tacos. But his friends liked it. And my wife has the same problem with this because to her, she gets much more attached to things. So she feels like, how can you just be like, I'm done. I don't want to do it. Like, that's not working. Done. So when I closed that was actually the most, like, what happened to XXX Chicken? I'm like, dude, you didn't even like it. Like, if I asked you, hey, do you want something to eat? He'd be like, I don't really like it. It's too spicy. But then for some reason, when it was closed, he was all bummed out, right? So unfortunately, we had to close Natcheria in May. He's like, my friends love Natcheria and stuff like that. She told me once, which always stuck with me was, so I have like fits, if I don't always handle stress the best way.
Gosh, that's familiar.
It's okay. We don't do that.
I'm having a little fit because I just can't figure it out, but I'm also in a way throwing it out there, hoping someone will make me feel better or calm me down, which she does a good job of. Yeah. One day she's like, he's watching you, right? So like one day I came in, I was pissed about something. So I was walking in with the mail and I threw the mail on the ground. I'm like, God damn it. And then she's like, hey, he's watching you. How you respond to stress is how he's going to respond to stress his whole life. I was like, fuck, he's screwed. I'm just having little fits. I tried to think, okay, so I got to be better at that. And then I kept thinking, all right, my parents made me think anything's possible. So I got to keep pushing him to just be like, anything's possible. Anything's possible. Now it's different because he's growing up like privileged. So I got to make sure that he's not kind of a douchey, like, oh, I should, entitled kind of thing, right? So we probably hammered that way too much. But no, it's awesome. He's like, he gets excited about the concepts. I'm trying to drag my wife in it more. We just opened a taco place, and I was like, went over, hey, can you draw a cat? What do you want a cat? Just draw a cat lying on its back. And so she just draw here. What do you want a cat lying on its back? I'm like, cool. There's so just trying to include them in little ways. Well, not little ways. She also went in and showed him how to make the homemade tortillas and how to make all the meats and all that. So, but like trying to make it feel like it's not just me. Like, I'm not going off to do these things, like we're doing them. It's hard sometimes because they kind of go in and out. And also because she'll be like, hey, you say you want me to be involved, but then if I say, hey, what about this? You say, no, I like my way better. And then it's just the whole.
Yeah, we struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah, I think when you talked about how your son, when your wife was talking to you about how your son reacts, I think we actually had that same exact conversation at one point.
Lose it for a minute. And I'm like, you're so good with your words, and he's watching everything, and he's gonna freak out the same way, and he's so good with his words too, like bring out the brilliance in him. Because
I'm so good 99% of the time, and then but when things aren't working out,
I get it triggers the male mind, like, and there's no other way.
Yeah, part of the reason you can be so optimistic, at least for me, is because I get all the pessimism out like quickly. But it comes in a huge wave, right? So it's like the reason you can charge forward is because like you're not doubting it, but then every once in a while it still builds up, and you're like, am I just delusional? So it just all comes out really fast. Yeah. And like, this is terrible. What am I doing? I'm so stupid. I can't be doing this. Blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, okay, that's done. Now let's go do something else. But like, yeah, it's kind of a trip watching that, like feeling that responsibility, which is like something you weren't really. I was like, oh man, like there's all these little things. Like, oh, I didn't teach him how to ride a bike on time. Like I got him started a little bit late on that. And oh man, should I have spent more time? I mean, now he loves riding his bike, but like there was a point where I'm like, wait, your friends are riding bikes already? Shit, I haven't taught you how to ride a bike. Or like, I was like all into team sports when I was growing up. He never just doesn't really, not that into team sports, right? But now in the garage every day, he's been getting in these like boxing and like interval workouts. And so it's fun. And like I can see he kind of likes it because he's getting older and he wants to be stronger, but he also, you can tell he partially likes that like I do it, and he likes the bonding part of that, or
That's right.
the approval part of that of like, oh, look how happy he gets when I do extra push-ups. Like,
That's awesome. But I see you on Instagram all the time getting at it. You're really going at it lately.
I'm at 47. I wish someone would have told me a long time ago, like, hey, you could be working. I mean, I went from like playing sports all the time to basically doing nothing. Mm-hmm. So now I feel like it's like, I got to get the stress out. Even people go, oh, nothing really bothers you. It's like, no, a lot of stuff bothers me. It's just, I have, exhaust myself completely right there. I have a fit every once in a while in the corner. And other than that, I'm good.
I know.
So, but yeah, and you got to be around, try your best to be around for a long time, right?
Yeah, you're healthiest.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah. So I wanted to quickly, I heard a story of yours, and it was a lesson that you learned from your son while you were playing Minecraft. It was one of the most valuable lessons that you learned. And I know we're running out of time, but I really wanted to touch on that because it just like, it gave me goosebumps and my eyes started watering. And we kind of discovered that same thing with our kids. Like we're always going.
I think it was the one where it's like, what's the point of just play? It's like, how do you win? He's like, you just build stuff and cruise around, And that was like, that kind of reminded me like when you get in a funk of like, yeah, why are we doing this? Like, it's not like a competition. It's not like trying to make money. It's just you see things and you think, hey, that seems cool. I should try it, or go do that. That was eye opening. The other thing about it was what I always thought was like when he was probably, what grade was that school? Probably like, when they start going to school in the first couple of years, it's such a trip when you open the car door and they get out of the car and they're going to a school where there's much bigger kids and there's young. And it's just weird. Like you live there every once in a while, you feel bad. You feel sad that they're leaving and miss them already when they get out of the car. But then you're like, what a fucking badass. Like this little dude has no idea about anything. They're like half the size of some of these kids there. And they just get out of the car and they're just, I'm just going to walk into this crazy world and see what happens today. That was inspiring of like, what am I intimidated by? Or why can't I do something when like, that's way crazier.
Do you ever bring him with you on a meeting or, kind of introducing him to the business side, the entrepreneurial side?
No, I mean, it's more just if he shows an interest in anything, then like talk to him about it. Or, if we can get him to watch Shark Tank every once in a while, see if he finds it interesting.
Has he ever tried to start a business? Anything he's looking at?
I mean, they do the stuff in workshop was where they would stay longer after school. They'd have days where you could set up fake stands and you'd still it'd be an experience, right? Like, hey, come over here and we'll tell you a story or we'll do a thing like that. And he liked those things.
Do you want him to be an entrepreneur? I mean, I know that, there's so much that comes with that. And it's like, I think of some of the stresses I've been through and, it's like, it's not easy.
You want to shelter them, but you don't want to shelter them at the same time.
You want them to have those highs.
Encourage them to do.
But the lows are so scary sometimes that you're not sure you want them to deal with that either.
I mean, selfishly, just want to be a little mini-me and just take over everything, and like be like, let's go to do this. And then when I'm like out of touch with, what's going on, have him be like the one, no, we got to do this and this and like do it together and all that stuff. But I don't know. It's such a weird thing of like, what's he going to be interested in? And then what's the everything going to look like? I mean, it's so crazy. Like school, like they might be not going to school and like, and just like, is college, I mean, are they even going to care? Is college even going to be considered a good idea? Like, it's just so different and weird,
Right.
Yeah,
things are changing.
I sit there sometimes, it's almost like the roles reverse and you kind of start to get like, you got a weird dad. You think your dad's like, has too many fits? You think and it's like, he's like, no, like last night I was trying to put together this prototype for the dozen boxing home workout thing. And I was having a hard time figuring out how to connect the mats and all this shit. And he always wants to do his workouts late. And so he's like, hey, what time's am I going to do my workout? And I'm like, dude, I keep telling you, you got to do your workout earlier. Like, you get to the end of the night, I got the stuff I got to finish before I go to bed. And like, you're not going to do your workouts tonight. And he's like, okay. And he walks out. And then I'm like, fuck. So then I go in the other room and I'm like, hey, dude, like, I didn't mean to like, snap at you. Like, of course I want you to do your workouts and it's not your fault you're doing it late at night. I think you should do them earlier. I don't know why 11-year-old needs to do a workout at like 10, 11 o'clock at night, but we could do it earlier. And he's like, no, I know you were just all frazzled because you were working on your dozen thing.
It's crazy how they get us.
Yeah, kids are smart, right? They get it.
Like Daniel's 3 and he got us. Like he would get us. It's beautiful. And they give us these valuable lessons.
I don't think the way I handle the stress, I think it would be much different without my wife and him. Like it goes back to the parents, right? My parents gave me the stability to be able to like handle all the uncertainty. It's kind of like in college, right? College gave you the stability. You can handle the uncertainty. You don't know what you want to do when you grow up. You fail a class, but you don't get kicked out of school. Like I got kicked out of the dorms, but I still get to go to school, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It almost took on that role for me and then made me continually comfortable with uncertainty and not knowing what I'm going to do. And then you get my wife, my son, it's like they make it where like it doesn't matter like if I screw everything up on an idea or if I'm not acting the way if I'm like mad because I'm having a fit and acting like a 5-year-old, they're the stability that's still there. She's not easy on me. Like she'll call me out on like, dude, you're being an idiot, or hey, get a hold of yourself. But she kind of knows when to like, all right, I think he needs a little pat on the back right now. Let me make him feel better and give him a pat on the back so we can, get back to him. That seems to be the recurring theme with family is it just gives you the foundation. So, all this other shit doesn't really matter in comparison to that. So you can kind of be fearless and all that stuff because at the end of the day, you fall back onto the family and the stability and the stuff that does matter.
I know you're writing a book and you have so many interesting stories and you've started so many businesses. So I'm sure you've learned so much along the way, especially for beginning entrepreneurs. Is that what the book's about? And do you feel like that's your legacy, that leaving that book for your family and for people?
I wanted to, first I was like, I want to do a book. There was, Tony wrote a book about Zappos and a lot of people were like, oh, you should write a book too from a different perspective. And I was like, I don't remember a lot about Zappos. I do remember, but like, I'm not like, I remember like 5 or 6 years after I'd left, a good friend who's still working there. He's like, don't you ever think about us? Don't you even care about Zappos? I'm like, dude, like, do you care about what you were doing 5 or 6 years ago? Like, it's cool, but like, I don't have time to think about it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I should have some, I would get, hey, I'm like the destined to be an entrepreneur. I'm not like super techie. I'm not like a super smart thinker type thing. I'm just a normal guy that's just not afraid to try shit. So I was like, all right, maybe there's something to that. And then I had this guy I was talking to, Carson, he was like, one of the guys telling me you should write a book about something. And then after I did that speech at Santa Barbara, it was like, maybe that's it. So what we've been kind of working on is like embracing uncertainty, how to deal with that. He started working on it. And then I just got so busy with different ideas. And it was just like, it's like my wife always says, she's like, dude, you always complain you have too many things going on. And then by the next day, you're like, I have too many things going on. Let's start another.
Well, you're the idea guy. I thought that would be your book, The Idea Guy. I know we got to wrap up here. The last question I got to ask you is if you were going to leave some bit of knowledge with your son and your wife too, if you had to leave and you had to leave one parting piece of knowledge, what would that thing that you would tell your son?
I got this book, Zen and the Art of Happiness, that I read at one point, which basically what I got from it was just everything that happens is the best thing that could happen. You just got to figure out why. And so I put a book on his bookshelf, kind of morbidly thinking like, what if something, and just put it in there like, hey, dude, if you ever need, if you ever can't figure something out, just read this. So I think that's what helped me a lot was just like when you start understanding like everything happens, why, right? And of course, everyone's first reaction is, oh, what happens if like something really bad happens? Like it's not saying everything that happens is good. It's just saying there's a reason everything happens, and you just figure out why is that the best thing. So I know for me that's helped a lot as far as just like not getting too sidetracked with like negativity or stress. Like, hold on, why is, and it usually always works out. There's always something you look back and you go, like that didn't work out. And even in business, well, that idea didn't work out because it needed to get us to here so we could start this thing. Or, you can't control anything. You can only control like how you react to things. And so knowing that I don't react to things very well, you do worry about those things, like especially with an only child of like, what if he doesn't have siblings to lean on and stuff like that. Yeah, that book to me is a good book. So that's what I would say to him. It's just, hey, anything's possible. Just try stuff. And also we just keep telling him over and over, just be nice to people, man. Don't be mean to anyone.
Kindness rules all.
Yeah, no, that's a great book recommendation too. So thank you so much, Nick, for coming on to our show. We really appreciate it. You have such a great story. And again, my favorite story of any entrepreneur out there. I mean, I feel like our story is okay, but we all, we put work together and put one foot in front of the other. You really creating this $1 billion company with, against all the odds, and doing it without, starting basically without money. It really gives people hope, and especially people who want to do something incredible in the world. And so thank you so much for coming on. And we shout out to Luke and your wife, and thank both of them for sharing you with us for this past hour. And we'll be hopefully I'll see you again soon, bro.
Wow, that was a phenomenal interview. That guy has so much going on.
Yeah, he does.
It just doesn't stop.
Yeah, I hated to cut the interview short, but we were just running so far over, and he just has so much that we would love to talk to him about. We got to have him back on again.
The Moon of Mars and more of his USR studio projects. So guys, make sure that you're following him
on Instagram at Swinmurn. It's at SWINMURN at Swinmurn.
He talks about what he's got going on there, and God, and he's an exceptional father.
And all his information is free on there too. So he's talking about his kid, and he's talking about how he's managing his life and all the things that he's got going on. So it's really perfect place to find out what's going on with him.
Because I want to hear more about that. His relationship and his relationship with his son, because that's hard to do, Dan. Like when you've got that much stuff going on.
He's obviously found a good balance.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
It's working. Yeah. Anyway, I'm so glad we had him on. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah, I hope we got something from there. I really would. I had so many more questions for him.
Yeah.
And that's why we really like to have him on and really get down and specific about what he's doing and some of the things he's doing to raise like that amazing family and still create these incredible businesses. So we have another great guest on next week.
Woohoo!
Yes, it's going to be great. So please tune in next week, and we will catch you then.
And follow us on the Pretty and Punk podcast.
On Instagram.
Yes, and please subscribe.
Threw back a little bit too much today, babe. Over your limit.
I was saying it like that because Daniel wanted me to give him the code so he could say,
one too many.
Stop it.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe. We love you.